The year is 1996, and Capcom is about to release one of the most groundbreaking games, and not just survival horror, but also in all of video game history. In this video, we'll take a look at the history of the game, how it's evolved since, fast forwarding in time to take a look into its ultimate form in Resident Evil 1 Remake, while also looking to its future possibilities for reawakening. Back in the early 90s, two creators, Shinji Mikami and Takuro Fujiwara, had a string of game releases while working at Capcom, producing titles like Ghosts and Goblins, Commando, Sweet Home, as well as a handful of others. One of those is not like the others, Sweet Home. This game is largely credited as one of the biggest influences for the original Biohazard, or as known in other parts of the world, Resident Evil. More on that in a minute. Mikami really wanted to do a really scary game. Not ghosts or crap like that, but real monsters that you could see that would come and attack. In this IGN interview, it was also mentioned that The Living Dead, Alien, and Jaws films were heavy influences beyond the RPG Sweet Home, which was primarily referenced for setting and premise. As I had just mentioned, the world knows Biohazard as Resident Evil. The US division of Capcom in 1994, prior to the game's release, received word that Biohazard was Capcom's new game. But in the US, that name was already in use by a New York band, and also by another DOS-based game, meaning a name change would be legally required, at least in states. There's a couple differing stories on the exact details of the name, which may align with one another, but Chris Kramer, Senior Director of Communications and Community at Capcom US, stated that they had a company-wide contest to come up with a new name for the game. After combing through a huge list of entries, the marketing group decided that Resident Evil was the best, as it was a clever pun. The first game was set in a mansion. Get it? His words, not mine. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on that response when we also have this additional information. In addition to this, I've seen that the name may have taken influence from Sweet Home, as a plaque in-game reads, "Welcome to the home of residing evil." I'll let you connect the dots of where truth resides in this residence of evil. Now, tell me if this sounds vaguely familiar. Sweet Home, which is loosely based on the 1989 film, involves the story of a famous artist gone missing from the confines of his own mansion. Years later, after a long period of the mansion being abandoned, and now dilapidated in appearance, welcomes a small team of filmmakers seeking to recover the lost artwork of the artist long vanished from within his own estate. Upon entering, they become trapped inside by a ghost. The team then splits up to find a way out, but will they survive with the looming monsters and terror awaiting them? Replace a few things and swap the filmmakers for a team of stars, and you can see exactly the heavy influence this game and film were for Resident Evil. To put it simply, groundbreaking. This was no sleeper hit, nor was it a hidden gem with a cult following. Resident Evil rocked the world of PlayStation, becoming a bestseller, winning Best PlayStation Game overall in 1997 at the Consumer's Choice Awards. Most critics lauded it for its advanced development in new experimental methods in game design, being one of the first and most prominent to use 3D with voice acting, live acting cutscenes, even if those were seen as ridiculous then and absolutely by today's standards. Beyond cutscenes and dialogue, though, what amounts to the beginning of the survival horror genre starts here. No doubt, with the success that Resident Evil 1 had, it was inevitable that a sequel would come around sooner or later, roughly 2 years. Resident Evil 2's release was at the time being delayed, and in order to make up for it, or manage to release a product in time for the holiday season, no factual evidence to that theory but worth mentioning, Capcom released an improved quality of life version in Resident Evil Director's Cut, which included new game modes, weapons, an auto-aiming feature that was missing from the original's English version, as well as other small changes. Resident Evil 1 would eventually see other iterations on the Game Boy Color, Nintendo DS, a remake for the GameCube, which we'll dive into right about now. With the success that this game exploded onto the scene, it took little time for Capcom to make tweaks and advancements as well as sequels. Not even a decade later, Capcom would decide to recreate that horror once again, in a remake of the original Resident Evil. Shinji Mikami, who, as you may remember from earlier, decided that technology had advanced enough to align his vision for the original more in line with better technology. In this instance, on the GameCube. Graphics had taken leaps and bounds in a short span. Add in the fact that Capcom decided to use pre-rendered backgrounds, allowing for a much higher quality to be present at the expense of using static cameras in the environment. Resident Evil 1 Remake looked years ahead of other games in the current generation, even still holding up relatively decently by today's standards in some aspects. Unfortunately, the GameCube wasn't a great financial success for Nintendo, meaning Resident Evil 1 Remake would need to find life elsewhere for better sales, which thankfully it received after many ports, making it a staple for nearly everyone to enjoy in the franchise. For more details on its level design or its upcoming future, be sure to check out these other videos dedicated to just that. The grandfather of survival horror is a timeless classic with a sweet home of evil in its backstory. Hopefully, we haven't seen the last of Resident Evil 1's evolving forms with Resident Evil's 30th anniversary only a couple years away. There's still a lot of potential left in the tank for another shot at a modern iteration of the iconic original. The current run of remakes has perfected a new formula that can smoothly translate to another variation while taking what works so well and injecting new life into it, even with a franchise that's about to hit their 9th mainline game. It's always a fun ride to look back at where it all began. What are your thoughts on Resident Evil 1's legacy, or Sweet Home, the entity that inspired it? Also, in case you're interested, I'll add a link to the full Sweet Home movie in the description below, free for your viewing. And after viewing it myself, it's campy goodness, and it's also kind of eerie seeing the similarities between that and Resident Evil. As always, thank you for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time on Hittobox.